Business as Unusual is a thought-provoking podcast that explores the innovative strategies, disruptive ideas, and unconventional practices driving successful leaders and companies in the ever-evolving world of modern business. Subscribe, comment, and share for weekly inspiration with our host, Aicila.
Today, we're diving into the cutting-edge world of biological age and why it might just be the ultimate competitive advantage for founders and business leaders. I'm joined by Ines O'Donovan, also known as the Ageless Futurist, who shares how optimizing your biology can help you avoid burnout, boost your energy, and stay mentally sharp well into the future. You'll walk away with practical science-backed tips to start feeling and performing more vitally, as well as a new perspective on how your own vitality could be the key to sustained business success. Welcome, Ines O'Donovan, PhD, and the founder and main force behind Jeunessima Magazine.
So good being here. I'm very much looking forward to it.
Me too. We had a great chat. Is a longevity scientist, a leadership strategist, and she created something called the Bio-Optimized Leadership Framework. And her mission is to help founders and business leaders slow their biological aging so they can perform at their best longer. And Ines challenges the myth that burnout, brain fog, or energy crashes are just part of success. They are part of sugar eating, but that's a different podcast. They are not a part of success. They are actually a sign, or they're often signs of accelerated aging, and they're reversible. So we're going to talk about all of that and probably a couple of other things. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, let's dive in because there's so much to talk about. Such a huge topic and something that's completely underappreciated by people, especially entrepreneurs and business leaders.
Well, so one thing that Ines and I talked about prior to this conversation that we're having with you all is there's a little sci-fi feeling to this idea. What do you mean biological aging? So you have a lot of data and experience that you've sort of brought to this. And we don't have to start with that. We can also start with a story. But I definitely want to dig into that so people have some sense of this. This isn't somebody who's promising that you're never going to have wrinkles or that you're going to live to be 600 years old. Like this is not that game. This is about feeling and being vital in your life, as opposed to that tired, drained feeling, and understanding there's a biological component to it.
The thing is that, as I was saying, most people underappreciate the importance of the biological age. And kind of we can dive a little bit in a moment into kind of what it actually means. But like a lot of entrepreneurs, business owners, etc., they measure a lot of key performance indicators that relate to the business. But they completely forget that their own biology is what drives it. I mean, just if you think about it, like you have, for instance, like an entrepreneur who is 60. And just if you think about the people around you, some people who are 60, they have loads of energy, they are super sharp, they really get a lot of stuff done in a short time. But then you have somebody who's chronologically, so based on the birth certificate, the same age. But it's like they're dragging their feet. They just, like they don't feel great in their body. They have a bad mood. They don't get stuff done. They have brain fog. They don't enjoy life either. So in a way, that's really an indicator of biological age. So what is it? Biological age. And there are loads of different ways to measure it. But at the end of the day, is like, how old is your body truly? How old are your cells? And if you are biologically younger, like your cells are younger at the end of the day, then you will also be behaving in a very different way. You will be experiencing life in a different way. You will be doing things very, very differently, which is, I think, also a lot more fun.
Yeah. No, I think that, and it is something we can experience. And that those folks that we know of in my own family, my dad is still going strong, and I definitely want to be more like him, right? So let's talk about, we've talked about this a little bit. Do you have an anecdote or a case study or a story you could share to give people sort of a sense of how this shows up for folks that you work with, or if you want to talk about how you discovered it? What feels most interesting to you?
Let me tell you one story in a moment, but I think the way I discovered it, just briefly, is I have been involved in wellness in the way since I've been a little girl. Like I was out collecting plants with my mom, and drying them, using them, and finding out from people what it is that kind of makes them look younger, feel younger. To be honest, I'm not so much focused on as you said early on, like not so much focused on how we look like. This will improve if we are better, if our cells are younger. But at the end of the day, it's not about the wrinkles. It's really about the feeling. And as I was progressing through life, and most of the time I had some type of wellness business, I was really wondering, how would it change over time? And my mom, she already, before I turned 30, she was like, oh, wait until you turn 30. Things will change and things will be a lot worse in your body and stuff like that. And it's like, no. Then before I turned 40, it's like my mom again, oh my God, this is a really heavy age. And really, you will truly feel all the differences. And your body won't do what you want it to do anymore. And because I was so heavily involved in the whole as I call it, biofinesse already at that stage, I was like, no, I'll show you that this doesn't have to be the case. And and again, I showed. And my mother didn't say it anymore before I turned 50. So she gave up on that because by that time, I had already convinced them that I want to live to 150 in good shape, knowing it's not possible at the moment. But there's a lot of research going on. And if I don't do anything for myself now, then I definitely will not achieve that. And I won't be as well. So it's really a question of the earlier we can start, the better it is. But it's not. But let me come to the story. So I had a coaching client who was coaching for 1 year, an executive woman. She had left her corporate job in order to create her own little business. So she wanted to do web design, and she wanted to also focus the time on basically helping a lot of nonprofit organizations. But so she was almost 60 and she was in pretty good shape. But she was like, you know what? It's kind of like, I don't have as much energy anymore. And I want that energy back. Plus, my eyes are killing me. They are so dry. It's like the sandpaper. And as we were working basically for a whole year, but already after a few months, all that changed. So suddenly she was like, I have so much more energy. This is really good. I can get all those clients because it's not a problem. And I'm not, hesitating to reach out because I know I can do all those things now again. And then a few months later, she went to her eye doctor. And the eye doctor was saying, what did you do? I've never seen this before. Your eyes are fine. There's no problem. I can't detect any issues. And she's like, yeah, I've been coaching Ines. And so we have very significantly reduced her biological age. We weren't measuring biological age as such, but just the effect it had kind of very clearly shows that. Plus, kind of as an anecdote she shared, and that's one of the reasons why I won't share her name. She was telling me that her pubic hair, etc., was all gray, and suddenly it was all back to black. So,
wow,
it's not something that's happening for everybody. I can't do anything about my own gray hair, unfortunately. So, it doesn't work for everybody. But there's an awful lot we can do. And just seeing those changes from having no energy, from having problems with the eyes, And for a lot of other people, it's, it's like, it's the mood, it's brain fog, it's creativity, for instance, it's making decisions with ease, sleeping well. There's so many things that really being biologically younger improves, that I think we all should do that. And I had, a while ago, I had actually a post out on LinkedIn where I said that in the future, maybe we don't have whatever CEO of whatever company, maybe we actually mention our biological age. It'd be pretty interesting. I mean, obviously it's provocative. So,
Yeah.
I don't think anybody will actually do it, like not in the title anyway, but I think it's something to really focus on.
Yeah, that makes sense. And understanding that vitality.
Yeah. And it's also, if you look kind of as a futurist, I of course look into the future a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see what's going on right now, all the technology that's developing, like as we age, if we don't do anything for our biological age, one of the things that also happens is that we tend to learn less. We are less interested in learning new things. And we might not be able to go and get all the benefits out of what we will be seeing in the future. So we really need to actually do something about it. And that's why really talking about biological age is your competitive advantage. It is your superpower.
Right. Do you have a couple tips? So if I'm listening to this podcast and I'm curious or skeptical about what this whole biological age thing is there something I can do that I'm going to see a difference or an impact or that you could share with the listeners?
There are a lot of things, actually.
Okay.
And I did, so you were earlier on saying something about my bio-optimized leadership model that I've created. I created that a few years ago, and I have only started now to share that more with the world, because I seem to be the only person at the moment who's really talking about that. And what it does is linking typical leader and entrepreneur lifestyles with the biological aging and the impact it has on the individual success, but also the success of the company. So coming back to your question about what are some of the tips, a lot of that relates back to that. So for instance, if you look at sleep, I am a strong believer that sleep really is probably the top one thing you need to optimize. And if you look at some of the basically literature, if you want, at some of the research, I think it's something like 42% or something like that of entrepreneurs who sleep less than 6 hours a night. Just imagine what that does to your brain, to your mind. It's like when we get proper sleep, good sleep, then we actually kind of consolidate our memories. So it helps us with learning, for instance. It also is pretty much the only time, or at least the most effective, that our brain cleanses itself. So like the lymphatic system. So, and if you think about things like Alzheimer's, dementia, we need that sleep. And then there are things like where our sleep deteriorates. A lot of women in menopause, they can sing a song, a very long song about having poor sleep. We can do something about that. If people, like a lot of entrepreneurs, for instance, they have ADHD. ADHD also changes the way we sleep, which then, of course, again, has an impact on how effective we can be. Also, there are certain predispositions, like when you look from a genetic point of view, like, for instance, people who already have like basically a genetic predisposition to get Alzheimer's, like the ApoE4, they also tend to sleep less well. So there are a lot of things that we should look into. So I have basically started doing some audits with people where we dive into like measuring the biological age, but also looking at genetic predispositions, because it's really important. because then we can adjust those things. But even without that, there are a lot of things that, like the typical sleep hygiene that we're always talking about, is very important. And
Right.
there are a lot of tips, of course. I'm not sure if you want me to repeat a lot of stuff that people already say, like sleep in a dark room, be consistent, have a wind down routine, put on like blue light blocking glass in the evening, or just switch off the lights. Don't be on your phone or watch TV, and put on some candles. It's also good, for like feeling much better. And so there are a lot of things, but there's a lot more that we can do. And so I don't know how much you want me to share.
Yes, I think a couple of tips that, especially things that you think are unique, that they can kind of get a sense of what it is that you do and how it might be different or supportive. Just
a lot of it is so it is important to understand. For instance, does somebody have ADHD? Is a woman in menopause? That makes a huge difference because that needs to be personalized. But one thing that, for instance, like one of the people I might still do stuff with, but like a researcher, Michael Grandler, he, for instance, suggests, and I have been doing that for a while now, is like when you get up in the morning, the first thing you want to do is put lights on. So don't stay and snooze. No, put the lights on and move. Immediately start moving. Ideally, you get outside into like the day, a bit of daylight, so that your circadian rhythm understands, no, now sleeping is over. This is the right time. And if you do that regularly, then in the evening, so like we have the melatonin in the evening and the cortisol in the morning. So in the morning, we will have more cortisol, and it's good, it gets us going. And so we want that. But on the other side, we want the melatonin in the evening. And it tends to be that if you have higher cortisol levels, then you often have also more melatonin in the evening. So there seems to be a relationship. The other thing that, as a woman, that I've started doing, and like years ago, a lot of people, men and women, were talking about the intermittent fasting and that you should not eat until midday and then eat everything within a short period of time. But for instance, Dr. Sims, she focuses a lot on women and says, like a lot of the things that we hear from all those biohacking bros, and I don't want to mention names, etc., it's just focused on men, which is true. Like most of the research is still for men. So, but one of the things that I've started being in menopause is, and I'm also gaining some weight. I'm not too bad in comparison to others, but still, I've been gaining weight. And something I've been trying now for probably 2 months or so is within the first 20 to 30 minutes in the morning, actually eat something. So, because that actually lowers the cortisol a bit. So, like, if we women have too much of cortisol, we don't want that to go into all our fat cells and stay there.
Right. So that makes sense. You want to personalize it. You want to understand your biology, both your own personal and then also where you're at in your life cycles and all of that. What does success look like for you?
Well, there are lots. So there are a lot of more tips. This was just sleep.
Okay, yeah.
So there's like, if there are things like stress that's super important. Again, is also partially related to, for instance, you can gain a lot of weight by being stressed. So, but a little bit of stress is good. So we need to be at our best. But again, a lot of people are stressed and they don't realize that this is actually creating, for instance, more inflammation in your body, and it's accelerating the biological aging, and kind of both together then actually lower your capacity to be at your best for yourself and also for your business.
Right.
So there's a lot of stuff that I can say. Like, so I have been, my best difference, if you want, biological age to chronological age was 31 years difference until I had hit perimenopause, menopause. Now it's only 16, which still for a lot of people is like, Jesus, that's a lot. That's really, really good. Being biologically 16 years younger than your chronological age, it makes a big difference. It's like being like, I'm not 60 yet, but so for me right now, that means I'm operating at a level of somebody who's 37 in comparison to a lot of others who are operating at a level of 53.
Right.
And it shows, I think it shows, but I can also feel it, and I get a lot more stuff done than others. And so part is the sleep, is the stress, and there are also a lot of other things. So kind of maybe one thing that I also think is interesting in relation to sleep. For instance, there were studies where they looked at some young people and just one night of no sleep aged their brain by 1 to 2 years, which was massive. And they were young. And also it's kind of like things tend to still get worse as we get older. But it can be reversed. But a lot of entrepreneurs, business people, they have like too little sleep, as I said early on. They are actually having several overnighters. So just imagine what that is doing.
Right.
And there's a lot of that type of stuff.
Energy, yeah, no, I get
energy. It. Don't let me even start about energy. I know that you talk also about energy management, right?
Yes.
It's not about time management. I'm sure we agree. It is about how much energy does your body have? Like your mitochondria. It's those power cells or the power factories, if you want, in your cells that help you to have that energy. But as you age, they tend to get worse. So we need to do something about that. And so there's a lot of stuff. But to come back to your question about what
does success look like for you?
Yeah, what does success look like for me? So for me, I'm always super happy when I can help somebody to be biologically younger and to actually see the difference it makes to their life and also to their business. It's just amazing, the difference. Like with a lady that I helped, the story I shared. If you see somebody going from, you can often see it in the body, from like being like hunched over, slugging, sometimes not even being able to really get thoughts out in a clear way, to think straight, to be creative, to suddenly somebody who has loads of energy, they want to do stuff, they want to be out and about, they want to explore new things. So for me, that's a lot of fun. And so for me, success is part of that. But also, I want to get my bio-optimized leadership model out into the world because I believe it's so important for everybody, to be honest. I believe, for instance, that every entrepreneur, every company should help their employees to be at their biological best.
Right.
Just look into the future. Like the trend is that our populations are getting older. We will all be living longer. So which also means we will need to work longer because somewhere the money needs to come from, that we use in our daily living. And so we will all live longer, work longer. I don't understand the organizations who let go of people who are, for instance, 50 and beyond because they think they're too old. It is actually an amazing time if they can help them to be biologically younger. So I've coined the term wisdom age. And what it means is as we go through our life, we make a lot of experiences, we gain a lot of knowledge. And if you're biologically younger, then we can actually, especially as we get into our 50s, 60s, etc., we can make connections that people in their 20s, 30s cannot make because they have not made those experiences.
Right.
And if you combine that with all the learning that we can do, all the openness to things, the creativity, etc., this is the prime time when we are at our very best. So organizations should be doing something for the biological age and then actually keep those people. They will have to in the future anyway. So why not start it and actually be seen as a company that is ahead of the curve?
Right. No, it makes sense. And you get the advantage of expertise, and if somebody is still learning and curious, you also get that built upon by them constantly seeking to understand whatever the new thing is or the trends, and so you get both the balance of both pieces.
Yeah, you get the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
So you have a double advantage.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. What about, one of my favorite questions to ask now is, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self?
I would definitely tell my 18 years old, I kind of did it for myself, so I probably wouldn't change that much for me. But I think that the awareness, like I would say to like my 18-year-old self, okay, be aware that what you do now will help you in the future. We too often ignore how we deteriorate over time. We ignore that, it's like aging, like at 18, aging, who cares? I'm good. My body is amazing. I feel cool. It's like, what are you saying?
Right.
So I think it's really, if you can start there, and it's not about doing anything difficult or challenging or bizarre. It's just simply looking after ourselves a little bit better so that we can keep the best body, and kind of, again, looking at the future and all the research that's happening, that could potentially mean, even though you were saying at the beginning, it's not about living 600 years, but who knows, with everything that's happening, for somebody who's 18 now, they will live a far longer life than we do. And they will have far more opportunities to do something than we had. So definitely look after yourself.
Right. That's a good advice at any age. What is something you're planning in your business? Do you have any events coming up?
Yeah, so there are a few things. On one side, the next Jeunessima Magazine should be coming out. So it should hopefully be out in about in the summer. And that will be all about nutrition. So there will be a lot of interesting things that people can learn about that they might not have heard before. And then in autumn, we're actually planning an event all around sleep.
Oh,
so again, there are a lot of things that people don't know. For instance, like as I was saying early on, the relationship with ADHD, the relationship with somebody who has ApoE4, like a predisposition for Alzheimer's, dementia. There are a lot of hormonal relationships. So much that we don't tend to know. So, and this event will be, the idea is to have super short sessions so that there's no fluff. Because a lot of people, there's a lot of fluff and it's like blah, 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 until they come potentially to a point. No, we want to really make it short and okay, you take away exactly what's going on for you right now. What can you do? That's the idea. And also I'm working on, and actually the website the web page is there for the wait list. So people can already get on the wait list for the Longevity Club for Entrepreneurs and Business Leaders.
Lovely.
Because again, I want to help them to be at their very best.
No, it is that vitality is so rejuvenating. for folks that are listening, how do they learn more, follow you, get in touch? What's the best way for them to do that? And I do have a list of links that I'll put in the show notes. However, if you have something specific you want to direct them to.
I think, so I've specifically actually for your listeners, I've developed what I call the biological age calculator. So it's basically, it's 14 questions only. But we actually look at the sleep, at the energy, we look at recovery, we look at the physical side, the brain, the cognition, the cognitive function, nutrition, menopause, ADHD. So even though it's just 14 questions, it actually gives an idea of if somebody is biologically younger or older and by how much. Like, just to give you a number for entrepreneurs, for instance, most entrepreneurs or founders are biologically 15 years older than their chronological age. So I think it's super important to understand that, and then to also see, okay, here are some quick tips. So we have like some less than 5-minute tips, or actually you might save time, to all the way to for people who really understand that and want to do something about their biological age. I have also some audits that they can access later on if they want to, if they find that they're biologically older. So
well, that's great. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for talking to me today and sharing what you're up to and the impact that you can have if you take some time to consider how to be vital as opposed to simply looking at a birth certificate.
Definitely make your biological age your superpower.
It's fantastic. Thank you so much. And I'll see you guys next week when we talk to Shez Mehra, who will be talking to us about audio design and the impact that that can have on your brand. Thank you for tuning in to Business as Unusual. Remember, in this ever-evolving world of modern business, it's not about fitting in. It's about standing out. See you next time. Stay curious, stay innovative, and always keep it unusual. I hope you enjoy the show. I love making it. If you did enjoy it, consider hopping over to the review portion of the platform you listen on and letting other people know about it. Or share the episode or the entire show with a friend or subscribe to the show. Definitely reach out, get on my newsletter, follow me on social media, and let me know what you like, what you don't like, and what you'd like to see in the future. Well, we love our guests. Appearance on the Business as Unusual podcast or any Bicurean consulting production is for information purposes only and is not to be considered an endorsement of their business practices, or character. Please properly vet anyone you find through this podcast and generally before you do any business with them. Thank you for listening.